Tom, one of the characteristics that theologians, philosophers talk about God is that he's omnipotent, he's all-powerful. And as I try to get my arms, so to speak, around God to see if this is a real being and something that I would want to worship, I would if such a God existed, I'm trying to understand what it means to be all-powerful. It sounds easy to understand, but the more you think about it, the more complicated it gets.
It gets extremely complicated. One of my colleagues, Fred Freddoso, and I wrote a paper on trying to analyze the notion of omnipotence. This was like 20 years ago that we wrote it. But we ended up with a very complicated analysis, which had like 4 clauses, I think, and I couldn't even recall it in detail for you now if I wanted to.
Well, tell me some of the problems.
Yeah, we would naturally think that, maybe initially think, that if God is omnipotent, if he's all-powerful, that means he can do anything. Mm-hmm. And yet when we start thinking about that, we can start realizing, well, that's not quite going to do. Can God create a square circle? I mean, that's something. Can he do other impossible things? Descartes at least entertained the idea that God could do impossible things, but most theists have not thought that omnipotence means that you can do what can't be done, that you can do the impossible. So it looks as if we have to say God's omnipotence is limited to doing what's possible, what can be done. Many theists have also felt that God's freedom is limited, God's power is limited by our freedom. God's freedom in terms of what he does is limited by our freedom. God can't make us do something freely. And that means that our freedom puts limitations upon what God can do. Many theists who have this view about our freedom being incompatible with God's determining our actions think that God has what's called middle knowledge, that is, knowledge of how any creature would freely act in any situation whatsoever. If God has that kind of knowledge, if he knows how I would freely act, it's knowledge that's not under his control. He can't do anything about it. And that kind of knowledge would also place limitations upon what he can do. Suppose God knows that, as a matter of fact, if I were free tomorrow morning with regard to coming to campus at 8 o'clock, I wouldn't actually come. Suppose we spell out the situation clearly enough. If he knows that that's the way I'd freely react to being in that situation, there just isn't any way he can bring about the world in which I'm in that situation and I do come to campus at 8 o'clock. So our freedom seems to place limitations upon what even an omnipotent God could do as well. Middle knowledge seems to place limitations upon that. And at least from our temporal perspective, it surely looks as if time places limitations upon what God can do. Various things have happened in the past, which we think are sort of beyond the range of anyone to change at this point. Kennedy was assassinated in 1963 in Dallas. That's something that's well in our past, and something that most of us believe is beyond our power to do anything about. Most of us would think it's even beyond God's power to do anything about now.
Because if God eliminated the universe and changed all our memories so that we thought Kennedy never existed or was killed in 1970, and we all believed it, it would still not change the fact that he really was.
Right. That would be creating a matrix type of illusionary type of world, but it wouldn't change the fact that this happened in the past.
Right.
So those are at least 3 limitations that it seems even an omnipotent being would have. He's going to be limited to doing what's possible. He's going to be limited to doing what's consistent with our freedom. And he's going to be limited to doing what's consistent with, as philosophers sometimes say, the hard facts about the past which are such that nobody can do anything about them. So I think trying to come up with an analysis of omnipotence, of what it means to be all-powerful, is very difficult just because it can't be simply power to do everything. It has to be understood in terms of power to do a lot of things, but with these various logical, in effect,
I
limitations.
understand the three areas. What about some interaction between God's primary characteristics? We say God is all good, so I assume that means God can't do any bad things. Or he can do but won't, or I'm not sure how to phrase it, but his
Right.
power, his omnipotence is limited by his goodness.
It might seem like that's the case. I mean, if God is necessarily good, and if he's necessarily omnipotent, though, I don't think there is any kind of limitation of that sort. It would be a limitation if God wasn't essentially good, if it wasn't part of his very nature to do what's good. It would be a limitation because we would say, well, there are things which can be done by God, evil things, which he's not able to do. And that would seem to be a problem if we think of God as being omnipotent. But if God is essentially perfectly good, then his doing something that's evil isn't even possible.
So
it would involve a contradiction. And therefore, again, if we think of omnipotence as limited to what's possible, saying God can't do something that's evil simply comes under the category of God can't do the impossible.
All right, so that's very interesting. So in the first category of doing the impossible, I was thinking of more square, creating a round circle,
Right.
Making it true that p and negative p both
Right.
exist at the same time, and
Right.
all sorts of logical things. But now what you're saying is some of the apparent contradictions within God's characteristics would also be subsumed under logical impossibility. Now, if that would be the case, if God's being all good was necessarily true, if it was contingently true, would that make a difference?
I think it would make a difference in that what we would have to say then is that God can do evil things. If he's not essentially good, then his doing evil things is something that's open to him. That's a possibility. So it looks as if, we still haven't come to a full analysis of omnipotence, but it looks as if that would be a possible state of affairs that God could bring about, his doing something that's evil. So we might well think that if God is omnipotent, he has to be able to do things that are evil. And there are some theists who have held this view, that being good is not essential to God, and therefore his omnipotence means that he can do evil things.
In one sense, that makes God a stronger character, because it's not impossible for him to do an evil thing. He just will never do it.
We hope.
Yeah.
There are many problems, I think, with taking that view. First of all, you don't have a God who's the Anselmian sort of picture of that than which nothing greater can be conceived, who has all of the perfections we can imagine. Here we have a being who is limited in terms of goodness. Being good isn't part of his very nature.
Well, I could almost make the opposite argument, and that says that if God, it's logically impossible for God to do something that's not good. It's hardly worth. If it's logically, if I don't have an arm and I can't lift my arm, what benefit? What character benefit does that have? On the other hand, if it's possible for God to do something bad, but he never does, makes the affirmative decision, that's a stronger character.
Well, in one sense of a stronger character, that's exactly right. God can't have a strong character in the sense of struggling against temptations to do evil in the way that we do. Mm-hmm. That's a kind of, if you want to call it strength, that we have that God can't have, at least a non-incarnate God can't have. Mm-hmm. Obviously, once we bring in the incarnation and we think of Jesus being tempted in the Garden of Gethsemane, the question of a divine person being tempted is sort of open in a different sort of fashion. But if we leave that issue to the side, there's a kind of strength that we can have that God can't have. I think that's exactly right. And this has led, as I said, some theists to suggest that we shouldn't think of God as essentially perfect, morally perfect. Okay. I guess I still tend to view it as a not overall an advantage, but a disadvantage to think that we have a God who can do things that are evil. There's another point I think that's relevant here as well that we need to bring out. Once we start thinking of God in that way, as a being who has evil open to him, it becomes very much an open question why we should say God hasn't acted in that way. There are lots of horrors present in our world. if you have a traditional picture of God as one who's perfectly good, we know that these are not things that he wanted to have come about. He may have permitted them for some greater good, but they're not a result of any sort of malevolence on his part. Once we open ourselves to the picture of a God who can do things that are evil, it becomes much more difficult, it seems to me, for us to have confidence that God hasn't done things that are evil. At least the doubt has to start entering our mind. Maybe this evil exists because God, as a matter of fact, has chosen to go to the dark side, so to speak. And that is not an issue that one who takes the traditional picture of God is ever going to be confronted with.
So in appreciating all the nuances of omnipotence, how does it enrich your understanding of God?
I think it's part of the picture of a God who's absolutely perfect, of one who couldn't be better than he is. I mean, I think we do like to think of perfection as having a sort of moral dimension to it, as having a kind of cognitive dimension, but it also has to have a dimension with regard to power, with regard to what one can do. In some sense, in this modified or qualified way that we were talking about, I think we do want to think of God, if he is perfect, as being able to do all things within these limitations. So I think we get a much richer and much fuller picture of God if we include omnipotence in that picture.